Hey everyone, it's your boy Fabio and I'm back with a new video, more specifically doing a video response to my good friend Majora T on what I believe is his latest table topic video. I think it's his latest. It might be. If it isn't, is second to last. But I believe it's his latest. Always be prepared, I guess. But it's on a very interesting topic, which I have quite a lot of things to say, and that it's why play games more than once. And I definitely have a lot of things to say. And specifically for this, I'm gonna use footage from an older video that I made, but I never published, in which the prime focus was my thoughts on platinum trophies, and in that, I remember that I branched a lot into the topic of replaying games and what I think of that. And yeah, I'm going to use a lot of myself from a different time, maybe some months ago, and add something more today. So we'll have a more complete video response and hopefully a more interesting topic for you guys to get on board with and share your thoughts on the topic of replaying games and why play games more than once. Do you like that? So from my point of view, in all honesty, that is something I rarely do. As a gamer, I'm not very much into replay games, and I'm going to use my past self to expand on this a little bit and use an example. So, past Fabio Loen, what do you have to say about replaying games? The key element here is that I don't like replaying games. Once I finished a game, it's kind of done to me, because as I told in a previous video, I'm extremely dependent on storytelling when I play video games, and once I already experience the story, I don't really see the point in replaying the exact same story. Even with games I absolutely loved, say for example, a game that I always wanted to replay but I never did because as at the end I always think, who cares? It's Treasure Cold Steel 1 and 2. Always wanted to replay them because I enjoy them so much, and I want to do something a little different in terms of like the romantic interest and that kind of like very secondary part of the game. So, but I never did it because at the end of the day, those are really big games. Like, of course, I know that in New Game Plus the game is going to be shorter, but it's still you have to replay the whole thing. I remember the story again because, as I said, the story is the absolute primary reason to me to experience a game. I know the story in a way. It's like, well, what's the point? It's not like rewatching a movie. It's very different, actually. So I don't see the point. Okay, yeah, I see. Treasure Cold Steel 1 and 2. It's a good example. Yeah, they're excellent games, of course, but they're very big. Even though, as I said, in New Game Plus, they're definitely shorter. And in a way, that's how I said in that previous video. Once you already know the big story moments, say the twist at the end of Cold Steel 1, the big moments in Cold Steel 2, which is still very fun to explore as a game, especially the second one. But yeah, the only reason to replay it is maybe you want a different waifu for Reen, which it's a secondary thing. It's not the reason to replay the whole thing, because we all know that Laura and Sarah are the only uh, plausible options here. I mean, who are we kidding? But let's look at a different example from a slightly different perspective. As you know me, I'm a huge fan of the Breath of Fire series, and in multiple times I always mention that Breath of Fire 4 is my favorite game of all time. But with this phenomenal game right here, how many times did I replay my favorite game of all time? Twice. That's right, I only played it twice, not 200. Like some people might claim on YouTube, like, I played this game 50 times, which is totally fine, of course. In my case, two replays were actually one full gameplay and a replay were enough to make this game my favorite of all time. I finished once on PC and the second time on the PS1, and that first playthrough was so impactful that in a way it was all I needed from the game. I don't need to replay it 50 times to properly establish why this game is so monumentally important to me. However, I really want to replay it now because it has been, gosh, almost 20 years since I played it the last time. I have my PS2. The last time I tried it, I also like replayed once to see if I was in the mood to replay this game because this is a PS1 RPG with all the nostalgia glasses, wink wink, that I can put. I mean, it's still a 20 years old game, and I say, does it still hold up? I tried on the PS2. It does. It really does. It's as gorgeous as the first time I played it. Everything is there. Say, oh my goodness, now I'm not gonna stop playing. And then I stopped playing because I realized, oh shit, I don't have a PS1 memory card with me. I cannot save. Now I brought a PS1 memory card from Italy. I'm ready to play Breath of Fire 4. Not really sure when it's gonna happen because, let's be honest, I need to give precedence to newer games. But eventually I want to play it maybe as a, not really a palate cleanser between other RPGs, but something. I need this nostalgia blanket that I've missed for so long. And as I said, because it was so impactful, I cannot wait to replay Breath of Fire 4 for the third time. My favorite game of all time, and I'm gonna play it to completion only for the third time. Kind of strange, but that's how I work. And but also with the topic of replaying games, I think it is interesting to look at more examples. Exactly why don't I replay JRPGs? But let's old Fabio N elaborate on this a little bit. That might be the weak point of JRPGs, their replayability, at least to me. Because, as I said, once you experience the story in a JRPG, for the most part, it's extremely rare that they vary. Like, maybe you can have the different endings and all of that, which, again, not very necessary to me. Never really been a huge fan of that aspect. For example, I only played Chrono Trigger once. I finished it, I'm fine with that. I don't need to see all the 50 or whatever endings. Um, what's another good example? Like Dragon Quest XI. Since I finished it recently, and I started the post-ending content, and it kind of killed the game to me. I've played about 10 hours of the post game, and I haven't touched it since because I was really getting tired of it. I already spent 70 hours with the main campaign. I don't want to spend the same amount of time just of grinding so I can finish the real boss. I don't really care about it. Where do we start with that? Let's go with Dragon Quest, actually, because speaking of Dragon Quest, for the most part, with all the Dragon Quest I played them once. But there is one exception, of course, like always, and that is Dragon Quest V. I've played this game 3 times in total. It is, by the way, my favorite Dragon Quest game of all time, and among my favorite RPGs of all time. It's a fantastic game, and I played 3 times, but experienced the same story over and over again. The only difference is that you can marry 3 different girls throughout the game. There's Bianca, Nera, and Deborah, I think is the third one. So I experienced all of that. And the grand story is always the same. No differences there. They're just like the dialogues between the hero and his wife are slightly different because the 3 wives have different personalities, and the hair of your children are of different colors. So they have, like, if you marry Bianca, they're blonde. If you marry Nera, they're blue, and if you marry Deborah, they're black haired. So that's the main difference. But again, small details. But I want to go back to something I said regarding JRPG replayability. For the most part, I agreed with what I said. Say, like, as I said, like Chrono Trigger, I only played it once. I don't need to play it again. Fair enough. But is it true that JRPGs don't offer different stories? I mean, with Chrono Trigger, I know that you can have a very different experience. That at the beginning of the new game, you can you can travel through the final battle, so you can finish the game in 10 minutes or something like that. That's interesting, but again, I never needed to do that. But there are also other JRPGs that offer something completely different, but however, these are rare, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong, or if I'm missing something, or if you can think of other examples that I cannot. But the only one that pops into my mind at the moment is Nier. Like, I finished the main gameplay, the main campaign, sorry, and then I immediately restarted the game because they said you unlocked a different part of the game, and that was an entirely like text adventure game. And then I never finished that because I never had a chance to go back and replay that. But again, it offers a different experience. But as I said, in my opinion, those games are quite rare. And speaking of replayability and all of that, I think this is a good segue to another topic, which is that of platinum trophies, because that's where my old video started, and it is an interesting segue to say my feelings about that, and then maybe we can elaborate on something more. But let's see what my old self has to say about platinum. I don't care about platinum trophies. I'm not that kind of gamer, not that kind of completionist. I absolutely don't have zero interest or drive to play a game 100%, even less than zero. It's something that can kill a game to me to keep playing it over and over and over again just to get that trophy. It's something I really don't like in gaming, and to any other kind of console, not only platinum trophies, but Steam accomplishments and all of that. Zero interest. It's not I'm against them, of course. I mean, I know plenty of people who really enjoyed and spent, like, I don't know, 500 hours playing a single game for the rest of their lives. And if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. Zero interest. That's pretty blunt, but in a way, it's kind of true. As I said, I'm not that kind of completionist type of gamer. However, like always, there's an exception to the rule. The closest one in my collection, now that I think about it, I got to reach another platinum trophy was with Mass Effect 2, because I played that thing 5 times. And I think I earn 80 to 85% of the trophies, but that's not the reason why I played it. I couldn't care less about the trophies. I played it because it's an amazing game, and I have 5 different versions of the story. A game like Mass Effect, it might be kind of the exception to me to replay it. Mass Effect is a great example. I talk primarily about the second game, but what about the rest of the series, since that's one of my favorite from the previous generation? I don't know, since the new one is coming. So from the PS3 days, at the moment I would say it's my favorite series. But Mass Effect 1, I played that game 3 times, simply because I have 3 different versions of Commander Shepard, and I made different decisions in each playthrough. And it's even though the first Mass Effect, you can say it's my least favorite of the series. It's not a bad game by any means of the imagination. It's simply that I think that the rest of the series is better for different reasons. But one thing that Mass Effect 1 will always have at its advantage, it's the fact that it's the beginning of that journey, something that you can never remove from it. And there are great moments in that as well, of course. It's just that I think the Mass Effect formula will be perfected by 2 and 3. Speaking of 3, which is my personal favorite of the series, even though there are the controversies with the ending, of which I'm not interested because I love the ending that I got in Mass Effect 3. But I played the game to completion only once, and also there is a second playthrough that I'm almost done. It's a different version of my female Shepard, with which I finished the game. Which the best version of my female Shepard, I finished Mass Effect 3 and the trilogy. I have a different version with a different love interest, with different choices and all of that. And I'm at the last chapter with that. I just need to complete the final part, which is the battle on Earth, basically. The final assault against the Reapers, which is just an epic section of the series. So you can say I finished it 1.5 times or something like that. And ideally, I would like to play the third time with my male Shepard. So we'll see. And then, of course, there's Andromeda, Let's not forget about that. Even though everyone loved to hate on that game, and I'm not one of them. I think it's a great game actually. I finished it only once though, and with a female writer, and I liked most of it. I mean, Mass Effect Andromeda is an interesting game because it has some big strength at its advantage, but I think it has a major weakness, which is not the facial features or any stupid things like that. I don't care about it. Let's start with the negative. I think the main problem with Mass Effect Andromeda it's the villains. The because let's go into the positive and let's mix the two. The concept and the let's say the setting of the story, the idea of the Andromeda Initiative and the species from the Milky Way coming into the Andromeda Galaxy to colonize it and make a new start from humanity and the others. It's a fantastic concept. I love this idea, and also the whole theme of space exploration. It's really cool. It kind of reminds me also of those old Star Trek movies and the original series, which is very much like exploring the galaxy and all of that. But the problem is that the execution and primarily the villains, the main obstacle to this amazing idea, they're so boring. That's the thing. The Ket are so bland as villains. I mean, it's like the Geth from Mass Effect 1, but even worse, because the Geth, at least, they have a super interesting backstory with the whole relationship with the Quarians. And then, of course, in Mass Effect 1, at least you have Saren and the beginning of the whole thing with the Reapers. So overall, it's a really cool villain side of things in Mass Effect 1. In Andromeda, it's just this uninteresting aliens and their leader, this Archon, it's the most boring of the bunch. So yeah, I mean, if at least they presented the Ket as the forefront enemies, but there is a major villain behind, like in Mass Effect Trilogy, which you have Geth and Saren, but the real thing is the villain, it's the Reapers, because in Mass Effect 2 you have the Collectors, which are super cool enemies, but behind it's the Reaper. I will never forget that the ending in Mass Effect 2, when you destroy the Collectors, but then you see the whole ginormous Reaper fleet emerging from dark space into the Milky Way. It was chilling inducing. It was amazing. And nothing like that in Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't know if they had bigger plans for that series, as I hoped. BioWare could have easily done a Pathfinder trilogy, I think. It would be amazing, but of course Mass Effect Andromeda didn't do well, so I don't know if we'll ever see another Mass Effect game, of course. I mean, maybe remastered editions, perhaps there's been a big leak about them, but a proper, I don't know, like Mass Effect Andromeda 2 and 3, or an even new chapter, I don't know. But Mass Effect, I think it's a good example of games that I've replayed multiple times, kind of contrary to what I've said basically up until now. But at the same time, I think it's kind of an exception because it's a game that it's built to be replayed multiple times. While most of the games that I love, JRPGs primarily, are not, because there's that story, you experience in that story, and that's it. Maybe you have multiple endings because, I don't know, you can talk with the different characters at a certain time, you unlock the true ending or something like that, but it's not a different experience in a way that the characters are different, the dialogues are different. I mean, not really. Maybe there are some exceptions here and there, but they're not intrinsic part of JRPGs, I think. And speaking of that, however, we can move to other games that I've experienced in terms of replayability and how I feel about this whole thing from different genres or subgenres of JRPGs. What about the Ys series, for example? So I don't know. It's the same thing, for example, with Falcom games. I mean, once I play an Ys game once, I'm done with it. I don't care about keep playing on higher difficulties. I have zero interest in that. Whoop, that example is, which it's true exactly what I said, as the only exception to that is Ys Origin, my personal favorite of the series. But because there are three different stories which are completely different from one another. Um, which is what makes it special. It's the best Ys game in the series story-wise, without any single doubt. But let's talk about the more recent one, Ys 8, the latest one we replayed, since we're waiting on Ys 9. I'm not even thinking about replaying that game. I already didn't like playing it on normal, let alone on higher difficulty. So yeah, as I said, Ys not a not a good example, because especially replaying a game just on a higher difficulty, I think I like it. I like the idea even less than simply replaying a game for, I don't know, to explore the true ending or something like that. So that's definitely not going to happen. What about other games? What else do you have past Fabio? And it's this thing about replaying game that, to me, it's really not there. I've always been like this with my games. As I said, there are exceptions. Like, I finished some games multiple times. Also, like back in the day, like on the PS1, I remember I finished survival horrors multiple times. Like Resident Evil 3, I finished that many times. Um, to the point I was almost able to do speed runs of that, I remember. Dino Crisis 1, I saw all the possible endings of that. Finished Dino Crisis 2 multiple times. Yes, survival horror games. That's the exception. Those are the games that I played the most overall. As I mentioned, Resident Evil 3, Dino Crisis 1 and 2, all of those I could have easily done speedruns during my heydays, like while I was in high school, basically. Between middle school and high school, I was obsessed with those games. And not just those, just let's expand this a little bit. Resident Evil 1, the remake on the Wii, because with the first Resident Evil, it was so difficult to me when I played it that I only finished it once with Jill, and that's it on the PS1. But then, when we had the remake, which was unbelievably good, that's how modern survival horror should be, in my opinion. Absolutely amazing. I finished the crap out of that. Again, to the point that I could do speedruns very easily. I finished it with Jill, I finished it with Chris, I saw multiple endings of both characters. I couldn't stop playing that game on the Wii. But we can even move from survival horror. For example, another game that I played, I saw all the possible endings, was Fear Effect on the PS1. Which, interesting enough, like the story was all the way the same. It's 99% the exact same game, but at the end you simply have three options for like the two bad-ish endings and the best ending. And to do that, you have to basically finish the game on a harder difficulty, if I remember correctly. Nothing spectacular, but at the time, and still, I love that game so much that I didn't have a single problem with replaying the whole thing, because Fear Effect was amazing as a game. Another game that I finished like to the nausea, basically, was Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation 1. I played that game so many times. One of my best, let's say, experiences with playing a game happened with Metal Gear Solid, and that's an entire video for another time. But again, I was able to finish that game in a couple of hours, basically. I had finished it with, like, I don't know, the bandana, so you have unlimited ammo. I have the whole stealth thing. I mean, play the crap out of Metal Gear Solid. What else? Let me think if I can think of something else very quickly. No, these are the only one I can think of at the moment, but I'm sure there are others, non-RPGs, that I finished multiple times, actually. Of course, like the Super Castlevania 4. I finished that game so many times. It's one of my favorite games of all time, of course. I knew the inside out of that game, all the secrets and everything, just because it was so good to play that game. As I said, it's one of my favorite non-RPG games ever, basically. While with other Castlevanias, actually, it's interesting to think about it. Especially with the Metroidvania, I never finished any of them more than once, which is fine, again, because it's back into the sort of JRPGs kind of thing. So let's just remove the glasses and stop goofing around while trying to wrap this up. But I think you got my point. I'm not very much into replaying games overall, though there are exceptions, of course. I mean, it depends on the games, because Not all games are the same in terms of replayability. And there is one element that I didn't discuss in my old video, which is the about remakes and remaster that Majora T mentioned. And that's very interesting because I'm very ambivalent about them, because initially I've always thought the idea, well, it's a game already have, it's a game already played, why do I need it? But then most likely in remakes especially now, they're going to add more content. Ideally, I hope so. I'm going to experience this soon, I hope, with the Grandia 1 and 2 HD remake on the Switch, which I ordered through Limited Run. I can't wait to replay. I always wanted to replay those games, which I finished both of them once, of course. Cannot wait to replay Grandia. Just the idea, it's very kind of feeling. But we'll see what these remakes will be, and yeah, it's an interesting approach. I heard, for example, that the Resident Evil 2 remake um, had an entire new sections and content, which is very cool, since I would love to play it eventually, because I only finished Resident Evil 2 once, contrary to the other two, um, which is interesting, because I finished Leon campaign, I finished Claire campaign, and I never touched it again, even though I loved every second of that. Resident Evil 1, finished it so many times. Resident Evil 3, it's the one I finished the most. So, very interesting. It changes from game to game, and overall, just to, as I said, let's try to conclude this. I'm very it depends very much on games in general, because I play JRPGs, which I don't think, for the most part, but again, it's just my opinion, they're not exactly built to be replayed multiple times, because for the most part the differences are minuscule in the grand scheme of things, because the main reasons for me to play a game is to experience a story, and with some exceptions the story in a JRPG pretty much is always the same. For example, this year I played the fantastic Stella Glow. Do I need to replay that game? No, because the story, which is fantastic, I know it already. The only difference that you can have is just to have different romantic interests, and I don't care about that. It's fun while you're playing the game to deepen relationship between characters, because it's something that I like, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a secondary element. And just to see a different 2 minutes like audio with images of the main character talking with a different girl, I mean, it's not worth replaying the whole thing. So there you have it. This is my response to Majora T and my feeling about replaying videos. I hope you enjoyed it with this different approach and my goofing around with glasses. But yeah, it's been a great fun. Definitely, I'll put the link to the video in the description below, and so you can participate to this table topic and share your thoughts about replaying games and why do you or don't you replay games. So see you soon, guys. Like always, take care.